Okay, today on the bench I had this in for repair. It's a Roboert Johnson product made basically in the company he renamed as Papasan, which means it probably was made by Ha Toys. Then Papasan got in there. Anyway, Roboert Johnson, who's no longer with us, and I shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but basically all of his products were kind of crappy, especially when it came to the paint jobs. Now, he had some interesting paint jobs, it's just that they were done poorly. In most cases it seemed to be like a spray can job or something. This really isn't any different in that respect. It had several problems when it came to me, and I was going to videotape the insides of the toy and actually show you what was going on there, but the video camera, which you're watching right now, was off doing a horse show, so I didn't have the camera here when I was doing the robot, so I'm just going to describe it to you. First problem is somewhere along the line, either in, well, it shouldn't have been in shipping because the way this thing is packed in styrofoam, it shouldn't be able to move around. So somewhere along the line, someone tried to probably get in there and fix the toy, and they ended up snapping the tab off the front of the dome where it latches there. Still has the screw in the back, missing the tab in the front. The main problem that I found, well, there were two main problems. The first main problem that I found is it did nothing when I would put batteries in it and push the button. So when I got inside, I could see that the where the light bulb is behind the pistons, it's a full-size screw-based lamp bulb. The positive end of that was actually touching the frame of the robot, and so that was shorting out the whole supply, because the frame is one side of the battery power and the positive is the other, and if they're touching together, nothing's going to happen. So it wasn't running. The second problem has to do with the special function. See, this is a limited edition, Papasan limited edition. On here somewhere, I believe it says, here we go, there's your Roboert Johnson stuff and everything, and the cool artwork. I mean, he would do custom boxes, which were cool, and he would do custom colors that were cool. It's just that the quality was generally really poor. In this case, he wanted this one ear spinner to rotate. This one over here, or is it the other way around? Yeah, now this one stays stationary, this one rotates, and the way they were going to make it rotate is they're coming off the end of that shaft with a flex drive. The flex drive basically is just a very small diameter, tightly turned spring, basically. And it connects to the end of this shaft here, bends down, and what moves these pistons is a bunch of cams that come up and that rotate. Well, the shaft that they're being driven with sticks out a little bit, so they would take the flex drive, bend it around in there, and shove it on the end of that shaft. That works okay in toys like the Alps TV robot and the early Mr. Robot. Some of them had a flex drive and stuff like that. But in this case, because that shaft is turning so quickly, when things hang up, the flex drive is going to kind of twist and twist like a spring would, and then all of a sudden, boing, unwind real fast. So you get a very uneven action. If it had gone to a place in the gearbox that was turning slowly where everything could keep up and catch, it would have been fine. Anyway, because of that binding and releasing and binding and releasing, that puts extra torque. It requires that the battery motor, which in this case mounts vertically, has a metal gear on the end of it, which is called the pinion, and that interfaces with a crown gear at a right angle. Well, that crown gear had enough slop that when things would get really tight and hard and it had to do a lot of work, it would pop away from the gear on the motor, and then nothing would happen. You'd hear some and then it might catch up and start grabbing again and working. So once I got rid of the short, I had to go in, and the easiest way to adjust that crown gear is it's pressed on a shaft, and there was slop on the shaft in the gearbox. I was able to put a spring piece of metal soldered to the frame pushing against that shaft. And because it's springy, if it really needs to move away, it can. But the spring will keep applying a little bit of pressure to that crown gear against the pinion gear on the motor, and got all that stuff working. Now, there wasn't a whole lot I could do to make this part the flex drive and all that work better, other than to make sure that nothing was binding up here where it leaves the body, and lubricated the flex drive where it rubs on the inside of the body frame here, basically all along here and down to about that arm opening. It is held, rubs against the body of the frame in there. So that's what I did there. Let's put some batteries in here, get the full effect. Okay. Well, and the other thing is, you know, because this is a PVC coated wire, you see all this kind of white gunk on it in places, and especially like back down in here. That's where this wire had been in contact. There's a piece of foam like this for the bottom size. It clamshells into the base. Anyway, PVC wire reacts, as you know, with the old toys that were plastic, and there'd be like a remote cable where it would touch it. It just melts into it, chemically melts into it over time. Well, in this case, it chemically melts into the styrofoam, and that's what all the white crap is on here. The other thing of note, since you've seen so many of these piston action robots, pug robots, you know, the original ones from the 50s, you had almost 30 inches of remote control wire. Here you have about 14. It's very short. So it makes it kind of hard to play with it without running out of room. So here we go. So you get spinning, but it's very uneven. Now, what would have been a better way to have done this project would have been like on the original ones where they had both antennas out horizontally and not one bent up vertically, is to have combined this shaft with this shaft all the way across and done the rubber belt from there down to a pulley onto that same shaft that turns that, and then that spins them. Because it's a straight axle all the way across and it's a straight belt drive up, things don't bind. But it does require that they would have had to try to find the right size pulley belt that would work. I mean, you can't go in there with a rubber band because rubber bands deteriorate in a year or less. You got to go in there with an actual rubber belt. So anyway, there's your Papasan repro of the piston action robot. And I don't believe there's any side we didn't already show. I believe we showed it. So if you've never seen the deluxe, or what they call it, special edition with the rotating antenna Papasan, now you have.